Main battle tanks are heavier and more powerful than infantry fighting vehicles, which Ukraine currently uses or will soon receive. They are designed to destroy other tanks and break through enemy lines. Their tracks are built for movement across open terrain, similar to the landscape of eastern Ukraine. The Pentagon wants to speed up the delivery of Abrams tanks to Ukraine and has decided to send a refurbished older model that can be ready more quickly. The Abrams tanks that the United States intends to provide to Ukraine are modern M1A2S, not the A1S that are in storage with the U.S. military. But they will also be stripped of the so-called secret armor that contains depleted uranium. The U.S. is removing some technologies from the Abrams tanks they plan to send to Ukraine, as they fear they could fall into the hands of the Russian military on the battlefield. The coalition of countries supplying Ukraine with Leopard tanks continues to expand, with 9 countries now committed to providing over 150 such tanks, according to U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Austin noted that over the past 3 months,
the contact group members have demonstrated excellent leadership in building the forces and resources necessary for Ukraine to defend its sovereignty and create momentum on the battlefield.
As part of providing Ukraine with the necessary weapons to counter Russian aggression, Sweden announced its intention to deliver 10 Leopard tanks. Norway 2 NASAMS systems, the Netherlands and Slovenia, continue to guarantee the supply of necessary weapons, responding to the immediate needs of Ukrainians. The new U.S. aid package includes additional ammunition for HIMARS systems, 155mm and 105mm artillery shells, 2 anti-tank guided missiles, AT-4 anti-tank systems, anti-tank mines, and demolition munitions for obstacle clearance. In addition, the aid package contains more than 9 million rounds of ammunition for small arms, 4 logistical support vehicles, high-precision aerial munitions, testing and diagnostic equipment for vehicle maintenance and repair, port and harbor security equipment, spare parts, and other field equipment. The military aid package is allocated under the Presidential Arms Reduction Initiative, which allows the U.S. leader to transfer weapons from American reserves in emergency situations. Kiev has been pleading with its partners to send Western heavy battle tanks that could play to its advantage on the front lines, where the conflict has largely stalled in recent months. The U.S.'s primary battle tank, in service since 1980, is one of the most powerful in the world. In modern versions of the vehicle, layers of depleted uranium armor provide significant protection for those inside. The United States and its allies have stated that Ukraine needs heavy armored vehicles as they expand the training of Ukrainian forces to combat Russian troops in the eastern part of the country. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg called the delivery of tanks and other armored vehicles urgent this week. It is expected that Russian forces will launch a new offensive in the summer, and Ukraine intends to start its own counteroffensive to reclaim territory occupied by Russia. Tanks will be crucial for victory over Ukraine, say officials in Ukraine and partner countries, especially as allies train Ukrainian forces to conduct combined arms maneuvers against entrenched Russian troops along the front lines in the east. The M1A2 Abrams has more advanced optics and control systems than the A1, allowing for more accurate targeting, and a separate thermal imaging camera for the crew commander, enabling them to independently identify targets in any weather and combat conditions. The new tank modification contains digital control mechanisms that allow the vehicles to continuously and automatically exchange information, quickly track the location of Allied machines, determine enemy positions, and process artillery requests. However, the Abrams tanks that Ukraine will receive will be devoid of the secret armor sets used by the U.S. military, which include depleted uranium. The U.S. employs the same practice when selling tanks to other countries. Any Abrams modification is significantly more effective in terms of firepower, accuracy, and armor compared to Soviet-era tanks currently used by Ukraine. However, they are more complex to operate. Among other things, Abrams tanks have a gas turbine engine that uses expensive JP-8 jet fuel, require extensive maintenance, and also need a powerful infrastructure, including M88 repair and evacuation vehicles for repairing broken parts on the battlefield. It is currently difficult to determine when Ukraine will receive Abrams tanks. They will be purchased from industry. Tanks are only assembled in one place at the General Dynamics state-owned factory in Ohio, which is currently busy with new orders for Taiwan and Poland. Poland has ordered 250 A2 tanks, which will be delivered starting in 2025. But in the meantime, it is receiving emergency assistance in the form of 116 M1A1 tanks, recently retired from the Marine Corps service. Warsaw requested tanks to quickly replace 250 Soviet T-72 tanks that it had transferred to Ukraine last year, and the disbandment of the Marine Corps' tank units made hundreds of tanks in good condition immediately available. Taiwan ordered 108 M1A2 tanks in 2019, and the first deliveries are expected in 2024. General Dynamics no longer builds M1 tanks from scratch, but it has a number of M1 seed vehicles, which are essentially tank skeletons. When new orders come in, General Dynamics modifies these vehicles with new technology depending on the selected variant. However, these upgrades are neither easy nor quick. The US has stated that instead of sending Ukraine tanks from its own stockpiles, as it has done with previous weaponry, it will purchase Abrams tanks from the industry. This means they will not appear on the battlefield for many months or possibly even years, considering the industrial limitations in their modernization. In the meantime, the US will train Ukrainian forces on how to maintain and operate the tanks, as well as the tactics of general maneuver, to help them integrate the weapons into their overall operations. Any version of the Abrams will be a significant improvement over the Soviet-era tanks currently operated by Ukraine in terms of firepower, accuracy, and armor. However, once they arrive, Ukrainian forces are expected to struggle to keep them in working condition, according to experts. It is precisely because of these issues that the Biden administration insisted on the delivery of German-made Leopard tanks, which are easier to maintain and train on. The first Leopards from Germany and other European countries are likely to start arriving in Ukraine this spring. Unlike other tanks that use diesel fuel, the Abrams has a jet gas turbine engine that consumes JP-8 jet fuel, which is more expensive and complex to maintain. They are also difficult to service, and any crew mistake can result in the engine exploding. Meanwhile, they require extensive infrastructure, including M88 recovery vehicles for repairing broken parts on the battlefield.
The M1 is a complex weapon system that is difficult to maintain, as we've already said.
Pentagon Representative General Pat Ryder stated on Tuesday.
That was true yesterday, it's true today, and it will be true in the future.
How Western combat vehicles heading to Ukraine could change the course of the war. On Wednesday, the Kremlin commented on the potential delivery of Abrams tanks to Kiev, stating that they will burn just like all the others, and that, according to Russian news agencies, their potential to help Ukraine has been overestimated. The donation of Abrams tanks may have more symbolic than strategic significance. Ukrainian officials have urged Washington to approve the delivery of Abrams tanks, claiming that it would prompt Germany to send its own tanks and overcome the bottleneck associated with shipping such weapons from across Europe. There are plenty of such tanks throughout Europe, but their delivery requires approval from the German manufacturer, which is reluctant to take such a step unilaterally. The U.S. decision to send Abrams tanks seems to have persuaded Berlin, which announced on Wednesday that this would allow other countries to also deliver their Leopard 2 tanks. Why did the U.S. hesitate to send tanks? Biden administration officials previously stated that the 70-ton American-made tanks create logistical difficulties on the battlefield in Ukraine. They are heavier than the Leopard 2 tanks. Instead of diesel fuel used by the Leopards, the multi-fuel engine of the Abrams typically runs on jet fuel, which can be harder to supply. Promises to provide Ukraine with more modern equipment have also raised questions about how its allies will train Ukrainian troops to use them. U.S. officials have stated that the Abrams requires complex maintenance, logistics, and specialized training.
It's expensive. It's hard to train on. It's not the easiest system to maintain.
Deputy Secretary of Defense Colin Kahl told reporters last week after a visit to Kiev. Throughout the conflict, U.S. officials have also carefully weighed whether sending specific weapon systems to Kiev could provoke Russia to escalate the conflict. However, after talks with German counterparts, the Biden administration decided to donate the tanks, and Berlin agreed to send the Leopards. On Wednesday, Biden stated that this decision does not represent an offensive threat to Russia, but was aimed at helping Ukraine defend itself against really brutal aggression from Russia.
To reclaim their land, they must be able to counter Russia's changing tactics and strategies on the battlefield in the very near future.
Said Biden about Ukrainian forces. How many Abrams tanks will Washington send and when? The United States plans to send 31 tanks, enough for one battalion, a Biden administration representative told the Washington Post. Delivery could take months, if not years. The delay is partly due to the fact that the U.S. government will be purchasing the tanks from manufacturers rather than transferring them from existing stockpiles. They must be paid for by the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, a fund intended for purchasing military equipment for Ukraine that the U.S. does not yet have in stock. Ukrainian troops also need to be trained on how to operate and maintain the Abrams tanks, as well as how to use the tanks in offensive operations. Leopard tanks from Germany and European allies are likely to arrive earlier and may shape the battlefield this summer. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.